Every so often, we experience moments dramatically close to death. These moments are sudden and extreme, and often remind us what it means to truly be alive. Welcome to Between Views. I'm your host, Alec Koski. This podcast aims to cast light on and connect you with inspirational people, identify them as potential mentors in your journey, and share their stories and wisdom with the world. In part 1 of our interview with Dylan, he recounted the moment he was attacked by a great white shark. What most people don't realise is the true value of what these moments teach us. In this episode, we explore the aftermath and lessons learned from a near encounter with death, and learn that creatures and moments can become mentors too. We hope you enjoy.
So Peter's telling me the jokes, and other guys are like, eventually now some towels have been brought down, they're packing the towels. And NSRI has been called. And NSRI in South Africa stands for National Sea Rescue Institute.
Yeah.
Volunteer-based organization, amazing guys who train and work so hard to deal with these kind of situations, all sea rescue, land rescue as well. And my dad's the oldest standing member in Plettenberg Bay, and I think the second oldest standing member in South Africa for NSRI. And so they'd been called by this time, and my dad was on the responding team, and I think their response time was like 7 minutes. It was crazy. Like from their call time to like them arriving was like 7 or 8 minutes. Like it was, they're a power team. Station 14, been rated top in South Africa for years.
Really?
Yeah, they're incredible. I really look up to those guys and still thank them every day I see them. That being said, anyway, they arrive on scene. So they hear shark attack. That's their response call, right? It's like shark attack. Everyone arrives on scene. Again, like you expect the worst as a first aid responder, whatever. And like with their energy arrival, it was like so we had been on the beach now for 8 minutes, right? Like me lying there, I've got Peter's beanie on, got the leash around my leg. It's kind of like settled. People can see I'm not like passing out, and like there was like a little bit more jokes flowing around, and I was also speaking to them. I wasn't like passed out or anything, and so we'd kind of like come to a relatively, stable environment. And then like NSRI arrives on scene, boom, action stations.
Got very serious all of a sudden.
Very serious all of a sudden. Like stretcher comes in, boom, 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 and it was like, it was like a well-oiled machine. And also watching that play out kind of in my little dream sequence movie state I was in was quite cool. So yeah, they eventually realized that they just ditched the stretcher and put me onto the surfboard and used the surfboard as my stretcher instead of like moving me. I don't know why, but yeah, they picked me up. So they rolled me I was on my back. They picked me up on my surfboard as a stretcher. I remember as I was lifted, my dad, so there's like 4 guys, or like 2, 3 guys, I can't remember how many are carrying me, but as I was lifted, my dad came around the 2 guys at my feet holding the surfboard. And so that's the first time like he saw that I was the victim.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was he on the beach that day?
He was part of the responding team for NSRI, but from the beach side aspect of it.
So he was working?
He was working. He got a call for NSRI like you do.
Didn't know it was you?
So when I chatted to him about it, he said like there's a few times in his life when the siren goes off.
Yeah.
Where he gets a gut feeling. He was like, oh, this is going to be a bad one. And there was one where there was an airplane crash and like bodies in the water. It's like he had that gut feeling. There was another call. It was a car crash. It was his brother that was in the car crash. He had that feeling. He's done hundreds of rescues, and that siren goes off. He's like, cool, he just responds. But there's a few that he's noted where it's like the siren's gone off. He's like
had like a deeper feeling.
Yeah, there's a deeper feeling like that.
There's something to that.
Yeah, definitely. And he had that feeling, and then like a minute later, he got a phone call from someone. And when he said he saw the name on the screen, he's like, this person wouldn't normally call me after a siren because they know I'm busy responding. And he said that phone call almost affirmed in his mind that it was me. For some reason, he's just like, shit, okay, like this. If this person's phoning me, they're phoning me to tell me that it's my son. But he didn't pick up the phone call because he's responding.
Had to respond.
He had to respond.
7 minutes.
So, exactly. So I think in his mind, he's like kind of told himself it's me, but then he also said he didn't want to believe that. It's just his mind playing tricks on him, you know, and it's not me. And so he comes around and sees that it is me. And I remember so specifically his face just drained of color. Like I remember pulling in a mahi-mahi fish or Fiji once, and or dorado as other people call it, dolphin fish, beautiful gold green, and then you pull it out the water and it just starts draining of color. Or like after you kill it, you just start you just see the color drain from this fish.
Really?
Yeah. That gold green shine just disappears. It becomes like gray.
It's like it's circulation or something.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
And I just watched my dad's face turn white.
Oh, man.
Like white. And I found it in me to look him in the eye and say, "Don't worry, Dad. I've still got my dick."
That's probably why his face trained. He would have been watching. The family name.
I know that so the
bloodline was in trouble.
Color rushed back to his face. He relaxed. He was like, "Okay, cool, brother. I'll see you later." No, it didn't really land. I think he was he was in shock.
I
man.
bet.
Yeah.
Any parents listening out there, if that joke lands with you, let me know.
Yeah. So but I think it gave him some like increment of reassurance that I was okay. Like, I had my humor and I was fine, you know. But like he wouldn't have felt it as much. But so they picked me up on the stretcher, and simultaneously they put the oxygen mask on me. Now I remember they put it on the wrong way around, and it was just that particular guy was maybe just rushed or off his game, and they put the oxygen mask on the wrong way around. They were just like, breathe, breathe, breathe. I was breathing. I looked at him. I was like, I don't think this is working. And he's like, no, it's okay, don't worry. And I like carried on. And anyway, by this time the ambulance has been called. So we arrive into the parking lot. So they've now picked me up and walked me around the rocks along the beach, which isn't like a 100-meter walk, maybe 200 meters to the parking lot. Get into the parking lot, ambulance is there. But now there's a crowd. Everyone's kind of picked up and like people are now gathering. There's a crowd in a sarai, some onlookers, some guys who were there on the beach, the other surfers. And I get put off the board onto like a wheelie stretcher that you push into the back of the ambulance. Bit of a flurry, like this part of the story is a little bit blurry for me. There's a photo or two of my dad standing over me as I'm being put into the ambulance, and there it is. I'm just throwing the peace sign.
Poor fella.
Yeah, so
he looks so concerned.
He's so,
and you're just like,
I'm just throwing the peace sign. Yeah, literally. So they push me in the ambulance. The ambulance pulls off. Gearbox breaks.
Good news.
Good news.
Keeps getting better.
Cool.
Stuck in the rip again.
I'm stuck in the rip again. Yeah. Just it's day full of rips, really.
Yeah. Unfortunately, your dick was still on.
I still had my dick.
Yeah.
I was stoked.
You know, we can all celebrate that.
So I called another ambulance. That time period passing, I have no recollection of. Like the time between waiting for the next ambulance. Like I think I was just I think by then they'd started giving me like oxygen or something in the ambulance, and I was getting hazy and blurry. And like next ambulance comes.
Any pain yet?
Nope. No.
I'm baffled by this.
Yeah, I don't know if they started giving me morphine in the ambulance. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to go back and actually ask. But the drive to the Mediclinic. So the Mediclinic's in Plettenberg Bay. Arrive at the Mediclinic. They've obviously been informed that I'm coming in, shark attack. Get into the surgery. They have to cut the wetsuit off me in order to like really get an idea of the wound. So like here they're busy cutting the wetsuit off. And just scroll like one of those two.
Oh my lord.
So they cut the wetsuit off, and once they assess...
Was there anything around the back or all up the side like this?
It's just all up the side. Okay. Yeah. You can just scroll a little bit there if you want to check it out. So once they saw the extent of the wound, they realized that the surgeons that they had on call, on duty, weren't kind of equipped enough to deal with this. Peace and love.
No, I was just trying to tell you. There's 20 minutes till dinner.
All right. What was I doing?
Oh, dear.
So, I think I can wrap up in 20 minutes. They check the stent of the wound. They realize the surgeons they have on call aren't going to be equipped enough to like do the surgery. So they send me up to Neisner Private Hospital. Neisner's a bigger town, 20-30 minutes drive along the coast. So that's where I was going to have surgery. So remember the ambulance ride there was like pretty bumpy, but like I think now they'd been giving me morphine or whatever. I was like hazy and a bit sleepy. And remember there was like quite, I don't know if you remember the roads in South Africa. They're like potholy and bumpy and like wasn't the most comfortable ride. But arrived at the hospital. I remember my aunt from Australia was visiting at the time, so I had my Australian family that were, like, they had been notified, they had arrived at the hospital, they were waiting for me. And I remember, like, I think by this time I was on morphine, I was stoned. I arrived, my aunt's, like, as I come out the ambulance, she's there, like, filming me. and I think I said, like, a few funny things, because, like, I was a bit stoned on morphine. And anyway, they wheeled me straight into surgery. Woke up the next morning and yeah, it was a bit more painful then. So before I continue, just to give you insight, the surgery itself I think was about an hour and a half, 2 hours. They said they spent about 80% of it just scrubbing and cleaning. The biggest risk with shark attacks is infection.
They have dirty teeth.
They have dirty teeth. Well, it's just, a lot of bacteria.
Yeah.
You know, 40 years ago, guy Neil got chomped off at the calf, and they amputated the calf. Infection spread up higher. They amputated below the knee. Infection spread into the knee. They amputated just above the knee. Infection spread up. Eventually, they just like chopped like right up. And it turns out there was like some bacteria that you only find in like pig's blood that was in his leg through the attack. And yeah, so the thing with attacks, with like shark seals, is just to get it clean. Disinfected. So I think they just scrubbed that thing clean with like a wire brush or something, and just like got in there and just scrubbed it, like disinfected. And then they basically just pinched the skin back together, and I got like metal staples put in. I had a few internal stitches, like all my muscle lacerations internally, but the actual like stitches in the skin, they just like pinched the scar back together. Like you saw how like almost clean cut it was. Like they just pinched the skin and just like metal stapled it back in.
Because muscles are all quite separate, so do they heal back and get their typical grain again, or is it like, do you struggle with movement of your leg and stuff now or anything?
Yeah, I never really rehabbed myself properly.
They stitch it right up. It's almost as if,
yeah,
I mean, something obviously happened, but it's like,
yeah, no
more holes, nothing. How many stitches and staples is that?
I think it was 168 staples.
What?
Yeah, I've got some heavy scar tissue. Like if you feel my, like, you can feel this later. You want to come touch my thigh?
You're gonna make me drop my pants too.
Yeah. Oh, no.
I've heard about this trick before.
But yeah, I got some gnarly scar tissue.
I'm not falling for it.
You know you want to. But yeah, I got some gnarly scar tissue. But no, my full range of motion, strength, like I can build it all back up, and for the most part, like everything's like pretty solid. Woke up the next morning, and family was all there, and yeah, I'd heard, like within my first like half an hour of waking up, I'd heard that there had been another attack that morning in Buffalo Bay, which is just outside Neisner, of a boy my age at University of Cape Town as well. Had his leg chomped off.
Completely off.
whole separate story, but like his artery like got stretched out and like shot back in on itself and just like seized and sealed itself, which is like unheard of. Like as a femoral artery, which is your biggest artery, like pumping blood, like to just seize and close, incredible. But anyway, it's like that information affected how I processed my own attack. So on a large scale, like I downplayed a lot of what I experienced based on the fact that I'd heard that another guy my age had lost his leg. So I said, well, I'm better off. So later down the line, that actually stopped me from really processing the trauma I went through, and like I sit with quite a bit now, and I got to work through. But anyway, yeah. So recovery, it was like 5 days in hospital. First 4 days, yeah, I couldn't walk on crutches, couldn't get out, like full bedpan, nurses, like everything was like, I was looked after. By the 5th day, I was on crutches walking around, like no weight, obviously, but I wanted to get out of the hospital. I spoke to my doctor, and he was like, yeah, cool, if you just go home and do this, this, and this, and keep the weight, like only in this time, like you can go home. Went home, about a month and a half. So my dad, he was turning 60 that year. He had a surf trip planned in July for Indonesia, and he postponed it to September when my doctor said like that's more or less when I'll be finished rehab. And so
wait for you to finish so you can go surfing.
Yeah, so I said, cool, Dad, I'm gonna just rehab so we can go surf. And like I think that was his plan. It was like we wanted to go to Indo with me after this to get the cobwebs out, you know. But before I went to Indo, yeah, my first surf back in the ocean was at Lookout Point, at the spot. And I think that was just something I had to do. Like it wasn't even a question. The waves weren't even that good. It was just sort of going back into that place, to just acknowledge it, give it the respect, the time, the space, the impact, like just really take it in and face that. And
were you worried when you were out again?
I mean, I suffered a few anxiety attacks the first couple months getting back in the water.
Like while you were out there, you started?
Right in the water. Because your trauma response, like your cellular body response to water now is that memory, right? Like it's waiting for that impact almost all the time. So when I hop in water, and like even now on the lake out here in a river where I know it's safe, I know the most dangerous thing is a baby snapping turtle or whatever the case is.
Nexus ran into one the other day.
Oh, really?
Scared the crap out of me. Yeah.
Don't tell me that. But yeah, I suffer still. Like my body seizes up, and it's just waiting for that hit. It's waiting for that impact. So I got to work through a lot of anxiety in the water sometimes. Sometimes I'm present. Sometimes I just trust. Sometimes I come to terms with if it's my time, it's my time. Sometimes I just get really anxious and have to get out the water. So yeah, it's still a big part of my journey I'm working through, and my dream one day is to eventually like free dive with great whites. And I think
face the fear again,
and turn it, right, like turn it from a fear into a love, into like a passion, into a connection,
it's a relationship. Why we fear things in the first place is because they're impressive. Yeah.
So to wrap up this rest of the story, because I want to come back to the most important part of the story for me that I haven't mentioned purposefully. Rehab at home was about a month and a half. Kind of like got to a point where I felt like strong enough, but didn't fully take it through. So still have a few like, quirks and things I need to tweak out and roll out and scar tissue and stuff. But I, went to Indo with my dad, 2 months in Indo. It was a great place to face that anxiety because like you can mentally know that you're safe, like no sharks there. So in the water, like you just know you're safe, but feeling anxiety and being able to like breathe and come down and like just reacquaint yourself with being in water, being in the waves, and become comfortable again. From there I went to Oz, worked in my uncle's and aunt's cotton farm, driving tractors and irrigating cotton. It was a good time. It was a great space for reflection as well, being away from the ocean. It's a whole different environment, being looked after by family. So that was an amazing part of the journey as well. I mean, there's a whole sort of story and reflection in there, and that's where my first tattoo came from. But so coming back to the most significant part of the story for me was when I woke up the morning after my surgery, the morning after the attack, I had this crazy sensation wash through my body. Like, it felt like the inside of my body, like the inside of my skin was like lined with shark scales. It was like, you know when you like have a full body shiver? I had a full body shiver, but it was like rough. It's just like, almost I could feel the texture of a shark inside my body. And when I felt that morning, it flashed back straight into, I remembered that at that moment of impact, even though I didn't register at the time, I felt that exchange happen. I had that same sensation where I felt like the inside of my skin had like gone like rough and like scaly and like shivered through my body and then was out. And I believe it was a transfer of energy. It was an exchange that happened between me and that shark. And I don't know if you've ever read or come across the term like soul contracts, but it's the concept or principle of, you know, if you believe in a soul and that you're a soul before and you're a soul after this life, there's contracts that you make with certain people and certain models, characters throughout your lifetime. And those contracts are significant contracts that help shape your destiny. And it's meeting a mentor. You and that mentor had made a soul contract to come together at a certain point in life to carry through your lessons, or, you know, coming across a career path or whatever it is. It's like that was the soul contract that was made before entering into the life that would be part, like, significant aspects. And so I was told, and when I started reading this, that, you know, it's just Shark and I had made the soul contract because it was the initiation point for me. It was the point that completely transformed my life into a whole different pathway. How I feel, how I think. So yeah, you know, full loop. Like when I eventually went back to university the next year, scrapped the PPE degree and decided to study my passion, environmental management, environmental science, and it just got me feeling so much deeper, and it took me on this journey that I'm still on today. 3 years of depression, numbness, like the adrenaline high lasted for a couple months. Like I'm alive, I survived, like almost again, like on mushrooms, like just everything's heightened, like the senses are awakened. You have adrenaline and life force like pulsing through your veins, your bloodstream. And it was just on such this high, and then you can't sustain it, right? Like I crashed, went through like a 3-year depression, numbness. I didn't feel anything. I was completely flat, depleted, disconnected, disassociated, and eventually have now like worked my way coming back. But it's all been a part of this journey. I suffer from a quite chronic body pain, like body tension in my muscles. Like my glute got lacerated open. I never actually built my glute up properly. So therefore, the rest of my body starts compensating and working to, you know, keep it all together. And then like things are working too hard and becomes tight, and this thing goes out and out of balance, and the next thing it all comes in the neck. And I suffer from a lot of like body discomfort and pain and tension. And that's again another dive into my initiation, like really showing up to feel like, you know, to heal this body, to heal this. And I think that's going to be a part of, you know, my journey, is eventually dropping deep in the body, you know, really understanding what embodiment is, and hopefully in some form or another helping people go through their journeys with trauma and embodiment, and doing breath work, doing body work with people. You know, I feel that there's a healer inside me, and I'd love to share that. And I feel like the shark attack was my initiation into learning how to heal myself, become my healer, to undergo that process, to then one day heal others. And so I'm at that point in my life now where I'm, you know, asking myself, well, how can I show up for myself? I've been neglecting a lot of these things for so many years. I actually, for some reason, a massive block, like all of the rehab exercises, yoga, stretching, Pilates, everything I could have done, PTSD therapy, everything I could have done to help get myself back to solidity, I just didn't. There was like a complete block there, and I almost think I got a bit attached to the identity of the pain, and the pain body and the attack, and how I just like settled into like, okay, well, this is how it is now. I live in pain, and so my name's Dylan. I suffer from chronic pain, and whatever, and that becomes your story, right? So yeah, I'm at that transitional point now. It's like, well, you can either change the story or stay the same way. So what do I want to do, and how do I do it if I want to change it? Like, how do I show up and step into this journey of, learning to guide myself, heal myself? And I've had many mentors, and I believe I still will encounter more, and I think those will be, some of the most impactful relationships that I will have, and I look forward to meeting the mentors that are still to come, because I need them. I think we all need them. We're not just one man show here. We evolved learning from the elders, so yeah, there's still a journey I'm yet to take, and I'm looking forward to it. Going from here, camp, like a lot of this, the earnings that I'll have from here will take me to these practitioner courses where I can go do, deep dives into breath work and body work, and really help get my system, back to like just regulated. Like, I think my nervous system is out, my adrenals are shot, my hormones are just all over the place, and I think I really gonna go seek out those spaces that'll help, re-regulate, bring everything back to homeostasis. It's like a really balanced, strong place. So the again, that sort of shark exchange, that energy exchange, people kind of, if you don't really believe in that kind of stuff, or if you haven't heard it before, people kind of raise the eyebrow, and I'm not here to try and convince anyone that it happened, because I know it happened for me, and that's the beauty of it, right? It's your story, it's your experience, and how is that story going to transform your life, and how are you going to actively engage in the lessons in those story, and step into that like journey and walk it, and walk it with strength, walk it with pride, with humility, with peace, and eventually bring, share that path with people. That's that's my dream, my vision, is to bring this whole experience into a place where I'm going to eventually share and heal and help people in whatever shape, form. I'm not sure yet. I've still got an exploration ahead of me.
Yeah. Well, I feel like even just sitting here listening to it now, you've started acting upon the thing that you're dreaming about. And I imagine that there'll be some people, and hopefully many, who listen to this and can take. I feel like that last little section there was drawing me completely in. I was like, tell me more. So, having the ability to tell this story and share your reflections from that, recognizing, you've made me realize that, it's not just people that are your mentors, it's actually moments. It can be creatures as well. I've learned a million lessons from one of my old dogs, for example, that taught me more about life than nearly anything ever has. And, a random encounter for 2 seconds with a huge predatory creature teaches you all of this in the aftermath.
So, speaking of creatures being mentors, you've seen the tattoo on my back of the shark.
Yeah.
Reading a book at the moment, a book series actually of, it's called The Earth's Children. Most people know it by the first book called Clan of the Cave Bear, but it's about this early sapien girl who's raised by Neanderthals and again finds her sapien tribe. But they talk a lot about totem animals in this book. And in the book, she is attacked by a mountain lion, and she has 3 scars, like 3 gashes down her right right thigh. And when I read that in the book, I was like, well, same spot. But their beliefs in the book, at least, it's a bit of a fictional book, but was that when you have an encounter, significant encounter with an animal like that, that animal has chosen you. It has presented itself as your totem, as your spirit animal, totem animal. And a totem animal is your protector. It's the animal you most need to embody in terms of its way, its isness, its essence, and it's your protector. And when I thought about that, I was like, I'm not really a shark. I'm more of a dolphin. I like surf. I like to play. And, but when I spoke to someone who has more experience with sort of animals, the animal world and the spirit world, she's an animal communicator actually, and she came to speak to me a bit about this. And she said sometimes it's about needing to embody learning the lessons from the essence of what that animal is. So she said, like, tell me about a great white shark, like, how's its way? And I thought about it, and I've watched great whites in the water, like up front, like in other surf sessions before and after the attack, and again from Reddering and from footage, and they glide through the water so effortlessly, with such presence, with such knowing that they belong there, that they're apex, they're big dogs, but there's just this complete glide of grace, power, and surety, their magnetic connection to their internal navigational system, like they're cruising the oceans, like knowing where they're going, their intention, so that glide, right, that ease of flow. And she's like, how would that relate to you in your life? And I was like, well, I have quite a bit of anxiety and I'm a bit ungrounded and I'm all over the place. So she's like, well, what would it be like to embody that essence of the way that a great white is when it swims? And it's like, wow, to embody moving through life with grace, with purpose, with knowingness, with surety. And then she says, and tell me more. And I said, well, then, like, where does a shark go from there? Well, when it sees prey and it needs to feed, it hunts. It's like, tell me a bit about hunting. And a great white is a very, very cautious hunter, but once it's locked onto its prey, it is 0 to 100. I think it goes up to 60 kilometers per hour. I could be wrong, but it's just full power, activate, torpedo, launch out the water, thrash. And it's like, well, how would that translate into your life? Like, how would you translate that into, and I thought about that, and I thought about opportunities. It's like, cool, if you see opportunities, having cautiously observed it beforehand, knowing that it's like the target, your opportunity, 0 to 100, going for it. No self-doubt. If you miss, whatever it is, you take it from there, but you take that opportunity, you go. And so there's a few more characteristics of the great white that I won't share because of time, but basically it felt like to me that the shark became my totem animal because it represented most of the things I wanted to and needed to embody to also become the best version of myself, to connect into an ancient wisdom. The sharks are ancient creatures. They're some of the oldest living fossils alive on the earth today, and they carry with that time, that wisdom, and so there's a lot of journeying and exploration in there for me as well, in terms of journeying a bit deeper into the spirit world and totem animals. But it's just just a reflection on that point. So I think I'm gonna call it there.
It's a real shame. Sometimes time catches up with us, and
but
there's things we need to do. But once again, I do really appreciate that, and I enjoyed that little second part there as well. I would like to hear the other characteristics that you learned from sharks.
Episode 2.
It's reminding me totally of Sunny Dog's my old dog, and all the things she taught me and those cool characteristics. So yeah, maybe we can get down to something like that eventually. At least you and I will chat about it on the way up to dinner.
Yeah.
But I just want everyone who's listening to understand that this was a really nice opportunity, and I'm really glad that we got a chance to share it with you. And if you have any comments, anything you'd like to leave behind, anything you'd like to ask Dylan potentially about what he learned from it, then please reach out in the comments, or I imagine we might do a collaborative post about this when the podcast drops. So yeah, go ahead, reach out. Dylan seems like someone who's very willing to share that story and enjoys the things he learned from it. So once again, Dylan, thank you for coming onto the show. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, glad to finally have
your story. Thank you for listening to part 2 of 2 of our interviews with Dylan. Next week, we'll be meeting our new guest and one of my greatest mentors, Nancy Boutet, to talk about an incredible disabled surfing program she runs each summer in coastal Maine, and hear what she's come to know about community and people throughout her life. This will release next Monday. Next, if you're one of our regular listeners, or even if you're new here, I'd like to invite you to leave a star rating for us on Spotify or Apple Music, or hit subscribe on YouTube. This genuinely helps us to get discovered by new listeners, and would be epic if you could help us out. Or if you really found the information valuable, you're welcome to make an offer of a scrumptious cup of Make More podcast juice at buymeacoffee.com/betweenviews. In other news, Between Views is always looking for collaborators. If you want to join the team or create something together, then please reach out on Instagram. Finally, who deserves to be interviewed on Between Views? If you know, then please reach out at betweenviewsbv@gmail.com or message us on Instagram. Thanks again, and see you soon. Between Views.